Hey everyone, you're listening to the TEN7 Podcast, where we get together every fortnight, and sometimes more often, to talk about technology, business, and the humans in it. I'm your host, Ivan Stegic. My guest today is Adam Evers, someone I've known professionally since we worked together on a site for Famous Dave's. He is the client, me as the vendor. Since then, he started at least 2 companies that I know of and has worked for numerous startups and mature businesses in Silicon Valley. He loves bacon, and I believe he has a website dedicated to it, which I'll ask him about. He's the founder of believr, which I hope to spend quite some time talking about today. Hey, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So this whole bacon thing, either you like bacon or you're wrong. I don't know why I can remember that, but you have a website about that?
I do. It's either you like bacon or you're wrong.com.
Okay, what's the story behind that?
Honestly, it just was an idea at one point in time where I was like, why does this website not exist? It actually came from Famous Dave's, where there was a bunch of people that just really, really like bacon. And
surprise.
Yeah, and we actually created a whole campaign around it. And then one of the things that I asked for when I was leaving was, hey, can I buy the domain from you and like all the copyright trademark stuff? And so I did.
That was a good move. Are you selling T-shirts with bacon on it yet?
I am not. So actually what it does is there's some tracking pixels. And so I actually retarget people based on that information with some social ads.
Great. I just went to the site, so I'm looking forward to seeing those ads.
Expect the ads. Yeah, expect the ads.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. I know you're from Minnesota, but I'm not exactly sure where and when. So where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Southern California. I grew up in Newport Beach, Irvine, that whole area. And then we moved on. I moved to Colorado Springs when I was, I believe, 11 or 12 with my father and my mom. My dad got a job with a company called Atmel. They were a big semiconductor factory out there for a long time. And then from there, we moved to Minnesota. And then I moved back to Northern California in San Francisco, where I am now.
You know, for the longest time, or for all this time, I thought you were born and bred in Minnesota.
I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or not.
I think so. I take that as a compliment.
Okay, I will.
Well, I know you went to Bethel University, right?
Yes, I did. I went to Bethel University, graduated in 2010.
With a degree in marketing and entrepreneurship. Was that a new degree back then, or was that how did you end up doing that?
Yeah, that was actually the first year that they offered the degree. I was the first cohort of people that went through the entrepreneurship program there, which was a ton of fun. I actually started the Bethel Entrepreneurship Club way back in the day, too.
And that's still going strong today, I would assume.
It is. It actually got incorporated into a bigger club. And the goal was to make the club broad, not just a business club, but for anybody to be able to join. So we had people from like graphic design that wanted to be freelancers. We had people from even the ceramics department that wanted to sell their ceramics kind of ad hoc. And so, yeah, it was really, really cool. We had a big, diverse group of people.
I don't think you want to be an entrepreneur when you grow up, right? That's kind of just something that's in your blood. So I'm going to ask you, what did you actually want to be when you grow up?
So my mom has a great story about this, but when I was in 5th grade, we had a Halloween, contest at school, and I went as Bill Gates. So yeah, I've kind of always wanted to own my own company, and always wanted to own my own tech company for, the longest, as far back as I can remember, to be honest, which I know is fairly rare.
Yeah. So do you think of yourself as a tech guy with marketing chops and creative chops, or do you think of yourself as a marketing guy with tech chops, or some other combination? Like how does that work in your head? Yeah,
I am a starter and a problem solver. And I use marketing and technology to do that. So that's kind of how I frame myself. Like, what I'm really good at is I'm really good at starting things, and I'm really good at solving problems. And so that has always kind of been at the forefront of my mind. on how I approach kind of just about everything. I would definitely say I'm more of a marketing guy with like a tech background. I'm not as technical as I would hope to be, or as I would want to be, but I dabble here and there.
I think you dabble quite successfully. Don't kid yourself.
Thank you.
So you've been at major Silicon Valley players, but you've always got a side hustle. Am I right?
Yeah, I that's actually one thing that's caused some drama in my life with most companies, but thankfully I've been able to work through that. But yeah, I've always kind of had a side hustle, for sure.
Let's talk about one of them that you started while you were here in Minneapolis. Coindera. It's now 5 years old. To me, it feels like it's still 6 months old, but it's been around for 5 whole years, and it's a platform for cryptocurrency alerting. That's kind of the way I'm summarizing it. Tell me about the itch you had to scratch that made you start Coindera, and then kind of correct me. Tell me exactly what Coindera is as well, please.
Yeah, for sure. So, Coindera, you actually got it like perfectly. The marketing message clearly worked really, really well on you.
Okay,
so
good.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So Coindera, ultimately we monitor about 32 different cryptocurrency markets, and then do pricing analysis, based on a bunch of different triggers for our customers, and then send them either push notifications, text messages, emails, that type of thing. So really, it was a need for myself. Most of my side projects and side hustles are normally things that I have seen or I have felt pain in, and I'm like, I need to build this, so I'm just going to build it for me. And that's how Coindera started. So Coindera actually started as coinauthority.io. And then it transformed into Coindera. So I was a day trader for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency back in, man, that was like 5 years ago. And so I would stay up for hours watching charts on, multiple screens and watch price movements and that type of thing, and just buy and sell. And so finally I was like, this is dumb. Like, why? I don't want to stay up till 2:00 in the morning doing this. I should just build something that calls me or texts me. And so I set up just a quick and easy kind of thing, and then told some friends about it. They're like, "Oh, I want to use that." And so it kind of became a thing, and then it became Coindera, and now it's it's been running for 5 years. We're profitable. It's a good little side business. I mean, we have 50,000 people have signed up, registered users have signed up. I think it's 60 now. So yeah, it's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it.
Basically bootstrap this thing yourself, and effectively you're everything to everyone. Your customer service, your business development, your QA, your DevOps. Did I get that right?
Yep. I'm an all-in-one startup.
That's awesome. With the tools we have these days, it's certainly a whole lot easier to do, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. With automation, you have Zapier, you have Zendesk. There's a bunch of just different ways in which you can automate a lot of this process that makes it fairly easy. So I try to automate as much as I possibly can. When I start a company and do something, at least from a technology perspective, it just makes it fairly easy to kind of iterate and move forward quickly.
So the other company you started is believr, your newest company. Mm-hmm. And so starting a company is really nothing new to you by this stage, right? What is believr?
It's a great question. So believr is an LGBTQ plus Christian dating app. It's going to be a community and a platform, really. Really the biggest reason, why we're creating this and the kind of the vision around it is to create a safe space for LGBTQ plus Christians. And I think, the initial reaction that I normally get is why, right? Like, why do we need this? Yeah, exactly. Which I think is a good question. Like, at least you're thinking about it, right? So for believr, like one of the main reasons why I created believr was really because meeting my own need, for sure. So, I'm a gay Christian myself, and I've been looking for connection and trying to find, my future mate or spouse, and just really haven't been satisfied with the current options out there. The current options out there are just not really focused or tailored for the demographic, my specific demographic that we're kind of looking for. And so I decided that I think that I can do online dating better than Match.com and Grindr and Scruff and all these other apps even Tinder. So yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was matching people and connecting with people based on values, versus just based on, swiping left and right on humans. And I think one of the things that's hard for me is I think these apps have dehumanized us in a way, where there's been this almost commercialization of humanity to some extent, where you are a product, right? Like you are a tile on a screen, and you are either swiped left on or swiped right on, and that just feels very, as a human, I just don't like that, because I don't think that really provides like a good experience for either parties, right? Like you would never, in a bar, if someone came up to you and was like, "Hey, nice to meet you, I'm Adam," you'd probably have like the common human decency to respond and be like, "Hi, nice to meet you, I'm blah, blah, blah." And, if you're not interested, you might be like, "Hey, cool, I'm not interested." But that's just not how interactions work online. And I think products can be built to actually help with that in those interactions. And so that's just a big passion for me, for sure.
You talked about value-based matching. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there are a couple other solutions that do provide something more value-based. Most of them include like a very long list of questions that you have to answer, and they try to create this compatibility score and match you and all that stuff. I'm more of a believer of there are values that people hold, and you can actually find out what those values are fairly easily. There's a Stanford kind of study that came out that helps show. It's a quiz, really. It's about 50 different categories of values, and then you select which values most align with you. And then you go through an exercise of nailing those, or of removing the values until you get to like your top 5, and then ultimately your 1. And then through that process, you're really able to see, okay, like these are my top 5 values, and this is my number 1 value. And then we're going to use those values to then match you with other people that share those same values, right? So there's been a bunch of studies in a bunch of different psychological journals around how matching based on values, or matching with another person based on values in a relationship, provides a better stability for that relationship. They last longer, they're more healthy, all the good things that you want ultimately in a relationship.
Have you thought about how the interface to select your potential date, match, friend will look? You talk about value-based matching, and I would imagine that you're filtering, or that you plan to filter users based on your values, find the highest matches. But ultimately, you still have to provide a UI to the user. Have you thought about how you might be different than swipe left, swipe right?
So one of the big things is what you first get to see. We want to help, or we want to allow users to choose what that is. So specifically, like if a user, for example, doesn't want to show a picture first, but maybe wants to show like a video, or maybe wants to show like some text or some words, or maybe it's just an emoji, whatever and however they want to present themselves to this person to then either select or not select, that will allow that. So that could even be like, hey, I just want to show like my 5 values, and then people can drill down and start to interact with their profile, if you will, a little bit more. And then also within just their profile, they will have the ability to select what they do want to share and what they don't want to share, right? So like from a public perspective, there are things that people might not want to share, whether that's, sexual orientation, because maybe they're not out of the closet yet, or maybe it's something else. There's a bunch of just kind of factors that we have to consider, and we want to make sure that we provide all the users with a good experience, and an experience where they feel safe and then open to connection, because really you can't form connection and deep connection unless you feel safe in an environment, and that's probably the most important thing.
So it's not just another dating app, it's a community and a platform that you're building.
You got it. So one of the things that, the dating app is definitely, phase 1, if you will. But phase 2, and one of the differentiators that we're going to have in there is this kind of thought process around chat rooms, right? And so way back in the day, you had, AIM, and you had, gay.com and gaychatroom.com and that type of thing. And that's how, ultimately people connected online, was through these chat rooms. For some reason, they have gone by the wayside and have turned actually more into either Facebook message groups or text message threads, or even WhatsApp. Things on Yeah, WhatsApp or Telegram, all those types of things. Mm-hmm. And so now it's more bringing that audience, since we are targeting a very specific audience, bringing that audience and having more of a in-platform, if you will, chat. So you can see, oh, this person's online and whatever else. Like, let's start chatting with them. Because the thing that we've noticed from data from a bunch of different companies, from Tinder and Grindr and everybody else, is that there's actually pretty standard times that people use these apps,
Really?
And they're normally all on the apps at very similar times. Yeah, if you look at a lot of their data, it shows that people use the applications most often either on the weekends or in the evenings. During the day, you don't see a lot of activity or marginal activity, but the majority of the activity on most of these apps is actually during the evenings and on weekends.
So you're building something that's hopefully less transactional, less product-based, and more community-driven and more communications-driven, which makes me think of the social networks that exist right now.
Yeah.
So you're really almost building I don't want to say you're building a social network, because you're not really, but you have this community that you're trying to put together that will organically grow from it, because you feel as though that's got more value than the transactional nature of photos that you swipe left and swipe right. And I would agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the value and like, it's very apparent to me too, like just from a business model perspective, dating apps normally don't make a lot of money. There are a few exceptions, you have those exceptions, and that's because they've attained, mass market adoption and that type of thing.
First to market, maybe.
Exactly. First mover is definitely has an advantage there. But one of the things that I think differentiates how I think about Believer is really it's a platform for a community of people. And so when I think about it, in terms of even having, kind of a news section. So articles and blog posts, kind of like a Huffington Post, if you will, but specifically for Believer. And I could see us having kind of blog content associated with it. I could see us kind of even almost building out like a media arm, if you will, within the app too, because there's a good number of podcasters that have, podcasts related to this topic. There's a good number of other things, but there's really no central like website or central place even for like I said, LGBTQ Christians to go to. There's just that doesn't exist right now.
So you will, as a user, be encouraged to provide your real identity and not some anonymous profile that you've decided to create just to game the system or to use it transactionally.
100%. And one of the things that we're going to build in is the verification process. So, you'll have to show a government issued ID or some sort of identification that we can use to then verify your identification. It's not going to be required, but it will be optional for people. So if you want to verify who you are as a human, you can do that. We will though require an actual photo of you within the application. So you are not going to be able to just post an abs picture or something like that.
Right. And I think Airbnb does that, right? You get you get you're more trusted if you verify your identity and you're a qualified host, so to speak.
Yep. And we'd put there'd be I think people are very used to the blue check mark.
Verified.
There'd be something similar to that within the UI, so people could see that this person's been verified and gone through that extra step. There's definitely a concern with the community that we've heard too. Is people are like, listen, how do I have confidence that the person I'm talking to is actually the person? And I get that. That has happened to me too, so I totally understand that.
Let's talk about why there's a missing E in Believer. I feel like we have to bring that out. So
Fair
Believer
enough.
is BELIEVR. Believer.
Uh-huh. Yep, you got it. To be frank, there's a couple of reasons. I don't know if you've read the book Creative Curve, but one of his thoughts behind it is that people can get on board with something if they can relate it to something else. And so Believer has a couple different relations to it, right? most of these apps, these dating apps, end in an ER. So Tinder, those types of things have that ER at the very end. And so it's kind of familiar for people to have that at the very end of a dating app. So you have that. And then also just the idea about believe. Believe is normally attached, and even the word believer can be at times attached to Christianity and to Christians. And so there's familiarity with both of those kind of connotations within that word to be able to help people frame what believer is. And sometimes it's actually kind of cool when you talk, like if I talk to a gay Christian, it's actually they get the connection fairly easily once I say, hey, we're starting a gay Christian dating app. It's Believr. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like I don't have to fight to explain it. It makes sense fairly easily.
Where do you think Believr will be, or what's your hope where Believr will be a year from now?
I would like us to have a year from now. My ultimate dream and goal, and this is I have this kind of written out and it's posted on my wall right now, is to have Android and iOS app launched in the United States by this time next year. I would like to be in 5 English-speaking countries too. So we're targeting Canada, UK, Ireland, Australia, and a couple others. So I'm hoping to have that international by then.
And what about 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I would love for us to have a presence worldwide. I'd love there to be an office. I'd love for us to have kind of a more global media platform. And then potentially even doing like local meetups, a conference. I could see us really going deep and really building community. And I think there's even potential to do kind of this scale or this model of how to build community within other related fields. I could see us branching out to other types of fields to be able to kind of build the same type of community, but just not like a LGBT plus Christian, but I could see it for other either religions or other kind of different areas as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think you're onto something. I think you are filling a need on the planet. I think that I can't believe this hasn't been done before.
I know, it's surprising to me as well.
Jeez. So I read the blog post that your creative director released, the first blog post.
Yes.
He's great. I love him. He's awesome.
I'm glad. He's my best friend, so I'm glad that you like him.
He's got a great way of writing. So Brandon describes you as a pit bull that latches on and doesn't let go until projects succeed. And I've seen you. You're tenacious and determined, and I love that. I want to ask you: have you thought about what would give you a reason to pause, a reason to stop and reevaluate Believr and say, "Oh, we can't do this. We can't go forward." Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, actually in the past 3 weeks. Okay. So that's a great question. So I've actually thought about that fairly often. Well, I shouldn't say often, but there have been a couple of times where I've kind of thought, is this the right thing to do? And is this something that I should do is the kind of the big one for me. So yeah, the last one was after, so we actually launched or soft launched Believr at the QCF, which is the Queer Christian Conference based out of, this year it was in Chicago in January, which, apparently the conference attendees, conference promoters hates everybody because Chicago in January is just miserable.
Especially this year, it was especially cold.
It was very cold, and that's okay. After that, there was a lot of excitement around Believr, which was really encouraging, and I loved that. But I think it became very real how much people want this and how much people need this, and that just was very hard for me because that's a lot of pressure, right? And that's a lot of expectation from people and that type of thing. And I'm to be frank, I'm just starting a new job. I love it. It's a lot of fun, and starting another company and doing it justice and really building out the app like how it should be built out for this type of community and for this community. They just deserve a really, really, really good app, and they deserve a really, really, really good experience. And so I definitely took pause and be like, okay, is this something that I can actually do? Is this something that I should do? Is this something that I'm capable of doing? And at the end of it, I came to a decision, and I was like, yeah, actually, I think I'm uniquely capable of doing this. And I think if anybody's going to do it, it probably should be me. And so, yeah, it was, but I definitely took pause to think through the decision and make sure that it was something that, I could commit to ultimately, because it is a commitment. It's a commitment to these people, and I know a lot of them. A lot of them are my friends, and so it's a commitment to them, and even to myself, that this is something that is needed and that is vitally important for the community that I live and work with.
Very nicely answered. When's your next milestone? When are you launching something? What's coming up? What should we be looking for?
Yeah. For sure. Good question. That's a hard question for me right now, just because we don't have like a firm timeline, mainly because we're working with a bunch of people that are just volunteering their time. So right now the focus is really building out an MVP of the application. The goal is to have that out sometime this summer. I'm hoping for early summer, but I can't, promise anything right now just because of, timelines are timelines, right? Like they change consistently. So more than likely we'll start to do that a little bit more in this summer. You'll probably start to see more emails coming from us, more updates. I want to do actually, something that's helpful is this guest podcast is helpful. So I think we're probably we are going to do a regular update via a podcast, kind of a bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, maybe, kind of update to everybody, just to tell them what the progress on the app is. You'll probably start to see some screen designs come out too, just to kind of show people what we're building and how we're building it. The thing that's the reason why I'm taking I'm being methodical about this is because there's a lot of very hard product decisions that I have to make and that we have to make to be able to build this. One such example is like gender. So gender in this space is not a binary issue by any means. And so how do I be as inclusive as I can, right? But yet also be efficient within like a searching or a matching algorithm. And so there's some trade-offs between, providing a free form field versus providing like a more selected option, right? And so thinking through that and making sure that, if we do provide that, making sure that people feel that they have, that they can identify with what's on there, but also be able to, feel that they have the flexibility for, however they identify to be able to be, to select that for themselves.
So are you familiar with the Open Demographics Initiative?
I am not.
You should look that up, and all of our listeners should take a peek at that as well. It's an open standard for collecting ID and demographic data in open source communities. So it's I guess it's tangentially related to Drupal, because we have some crossover of the people that are implementing the open demographic standards in the Drupal project. But I would very highly recommend you taking a peek for that to that. And if you do a Google search for it, open demographics, you'll see that. So it's a whole lot of information and kind of standards as to how to implement gender fields. And that might be useful to you. And we'll link to it in the transcript of the podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Right, so we've got kind of a launch date coming up soon, or not, like summer. We have some hard decisions you're going to be making. Where can we find you online?
believr or just me?
Oh, believr.
Yeah, so believr, it's believr.app, so BELIVR.app. And then if you want to, just the easy way to link to all of our social media and all that type of thing, it's believr.app/share. And there's links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that kind of fun stuff.
That's awesome. It's been great talking to you, Adam. Thank you so much for spending your time with me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's so good to talk to you. I've missed you.
I've missed you too. We should do this again very soon.
I would enjoy that.
Adam Evers is the founder of believr, where LGBTQ plus Christians come to find meaningful connections, dates, and life partners. And you can find them online at believr.app. That's believr without an E, .app. Adam is all over the internet as @AdamEvers, and of course at adamevers.com. You've been listening to the TEN7 Podcast. Find us online at ten7.com/podcast. And if you have a second, do send us a message. We love hearing from you. Our email address is podcast@ten7.com. Until next time, this is Ivan Stegic. Thank you for listening.